Disclaimer: this is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material. Good day, everyone. Our group will be reporting about the global divides, the North and the South. So, how did the global divide develop? The division between the global North and the global South emerged as a result of historical process of colonization, economic exploitation, and power imbalances. European colonial powers during the era of imperialism subjugated and exploited vast regions of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, extracting resources and wealth while imposing their political and economic systems. This colonial legacy, coupled with unequal terms of global trade, debt burdens, and geopolitical influences, has perpetuated a structural divide, with the global north comprising wealthy and industrialized nations with significant global influence, and the global south consisting of less developed nations that have often struggled to break free from the legacies of colonialism and achieving equitable participation in the global economy and international decision-making process. So here are the key factors that have contributed to the global divide. Number one is colonialism and imperialism. European colonial powers established vast empires in the Africa, Asia, and the Americas. During the Age of Exploration and later periods, these colonial powers extracted resources, wealth, and labors from their colonies, often leaving these regions economically and socially disadvantaged. So, number two, unequal trade relationships. Historical trade relationships between colonial powers and their colonies were often highly exploitative. Colonies were forced to export raw materials and agricultural products at low prices while importing manufactured goods from their colonial rulers at high prices, leading to trade imbalances and economic dependency. Number 3. Global economic systems. The global economic systems, shaped by institutions like the World Bank, International Monetary Fund or the IMF, and the World Trade Organization or the WTO, has been criticized for perpetuating inequality. Policies such as structural adjustments program and trade liberalization have sometimes had negative impact on the economies of developing countries.
So I will continue the discussion of Serenos, which is the key factors that have contributed to divide. Number four is geopolitical factors. Global powers dynamics, including the influence of superpowers and geopolitical conflicts, and have played a role in perpetuating the divide. This dynamic can affect resource allocations and international aid. So, number five, lack of access education. It is important of individual to have a education because it can make us good future. So, unequal access to education in many developing countries limits human capital development. Okay, so making it difficult for these countries to compete in the global economy. So number six is a technological disparities. Access to technology and the digital divide also contribute to global inequality. Lack of access to information and communication technologies can hinder economic development. Without um, technologies, we cannot easily access everything that we need. Number seven, political instability and conflict in some regions of global south can hinder economic development and exacerbate inequality. So number eight, cultural and social factors, cultural, social, and demographic factors can also play a role. Issues such as gender inequality, so like gay, ethnic context and populations growth rates can impact a country development trajectory. So that will be all. Thank you, sir.
Why the global divides the North and the South? I would like to discuss the division of the world into what we commonly refer to as the North and the South. This division serves as a way to describe global economic, political, and social disparities that exist in our world. It's important to understand the factors contributing to this divide as they have significant implications for the well-being of countries and regions worldwide. But first, let us watch a short video that talks about the global division of South and the North.
Did you know that global divide is also known as North-South divide? It is a global socio-economic and political categorization. The Cold War era generalization places countries in two distinct groups. The global north is comprised of all first world countries and most second world countries, which are wealthy developed countries, while the global south is comprised of third world countries or poorer developing countries or least developed countries. In the 1980s, the Brandt Line was proposed by West German former Chancellor, Willy Brandt. It was developed as a way of showing how the world was geographically split into relatively richer and poorer nations. Richer countries are almost all located in the northern hemisphere. Poorer countries are mostly located in tropical regions and in the southern hemisphere. The origin of dividing countries into the North-South divide arose during the Cold War of the mid-20th century. During this time, countries were primarily categorized according to their alignment between the Russian East and the American West. Countries in the East like the Soviet Union and China, which became classified as Second World countries. In the West, the United States and its allies were labeled as First World countries. This division left out many countries which were poorer than the First World and Second World countries. The poor countries were eventually labeled as Third World countries. This categorization was later abandoned after the Second World countries joined the First World countries. New criteria was established to categorize countries, which was named the North-South divide, where First World countries were known as the North while Third World countries comprised the South. What is global North and global South? They are considered as the richer or high-income countries such as Canada, US, European countries, Israel, and developed parts of East Asia with the exception of Australia and New Zealand. They are characterized by established democracy, wealth, technological advancement, political stability, aging population growth and dominance of world trade politics. They are the poorer countries or less developed counties characterized by low level of economic development, large inequalities in living standards and low life expectancy, such as Latin America, African countries, and developing Asia. They are characterized by low level of economic development, large inequalities in living standards and low life expectancy. What are the differences between the global North and global South? The global North have less population. They are the countries with high wealth, high standard of living, high technological advancement, high economic and educational development, and they are more on industrial. While the global South have large population, the countries suffer from high poverty, low standard of living, less technological advancement, low economic and educational development, and they are more on agricultural. What are the reasons of global divide? It is caused by political power, economic dependency, and importation-exportation of resources. The transition of industrial production to cheaper labor sources, international media, and expanding international trade and communication have in some ways made the world smaller, yet in other ways made the gaps between nations larger by creating greater dependency of poor nations to wealthy nations.
So, as we saw in the video, we understand how the global divides the North and the South. And then why the global divides the North and the South. So, the division of the world into North and South is primarily a geographical and directional convention for ease of reference and communication. It simplifies global discussions and analyzes by providing a frame of reference based on Earth's axis. While the division is not an inherent source of division itself, it has been used in discussions related to global disparities, economic development, and geopolitical relationships to highlight differences between regions. So, so how they divide? There are factors of how the global divides the North and the South. The first one is the economic disparities. So, the global North typically encompasses economically developed countries found in North America, Western Europe, and parts of Asia. So, these countries boast advanced industrial economies, higher income levels, and greater access to, to resources and technology. While in contrast, the global south includes less economically developed countries in regions like Africa, Latin America, parts of Asia, and Oceania. These countries often grapple with issues such as poverty, underdevelopment, and economic challenges. So the second factor is the historical factors. Historical processes like colonialism and imperialism have played a crucial role in shaping the North-South divide. Many countries in the global south were former colonies of European powers, leading to exploitation of their resources and imposition of political and economic systems that favored the colonizers. And the legacies of colonialism continue to impact these countries even today, shaping their socio-economic landscapes. They they inherit the culture. So the third one is political power. It's worth noting that the global north often wields more political power and influence on the international stage, like the United States, the Europe, they key institutions like the United Nations, Security Council, and international financial organizations such as the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank have faced criticism for being dominated by northern countries. This dominance grants northern countries more decision-making power in global affairs. So the fourth one is the access to healthcare and education. So that is one of the factors. The disparities in access to healthcare and education also contribute significantly to the global divide. Many countries in the global south struggle with inadequate healthcare systems and lower literacy rates, which can hinder their development and overall well-being.
My topic is all about the continuation of Mr. Renato's topic. So, why the global divides North and South? So, first is trade imbalances. Global trade often favors northern countries who export manufactured goods and technology while importing agricultural products from the south. Materials and agricultural products from the south. These imbalances can perpetuate economic inequalities. So, we Philippines we export goods like gold, copper, and iron ore. Then, we export those, they modify it and turn it into something new. Then, sell it back to us in a much higher price. So, there is inequalities right there. The inequality in the inequality in our profit. It's a profit. Then next is climate change. Global South countries are disproportionately impacted by climate change due to their vulnerability to extreme weather events, limited resources for adaptation, and historical contribution to greenhouse gases emission by northern countries. So we all know that northern countries produce much greenhouse gas. Then it impacted us pretty well, especially Philippines, those in Surigao. Our main source there are crops like palay, rice, palay, then mais, and copra, or no, coconut. When there is a typhoon, there will be no ani like harvest. Wala ani sa palay, wala ani sa mais, or much more gamay ang ani. Then it causes sa coconut oil coconut, the copra, madaot ang punuan sa mga coconut. Then walay putot, mapalad ang mga putot. Then lisod siya ibaligya pag ulan. So next is the conflict and instability political instability, conflict, and corruption in many global south countries hinder development by discouraging foreign investment, disrupting economic growth, and leading to humanitarian crisis. So di na tamo layo. Philippines, like we have ISIS, MILF, NPA, Maute. Those groups I mentioned na they hinder us in our growth. They bring terror and stagnant sa atong economic. Then next is debt burden. Many countries in the global south carry significant levels of debt, often on to northern countries or international financial institutions. High debt burdens can divert resources away from social economic development. So, another again, Philippines. We have so much debt, including the one China, no? So high ko siya, but I hope it will get paid soon. So ito. In conclusion, efforts have been made to address these disparities through international cooperation, development aid, and initiatives like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. However, achieving global equity remains a complex and ongoing challenge. The division into North and South serves as a shorthand way of highlighting these disparities and the need for action to bridge the gap.
I will be the one to introduce the difference between Third World and Global South. Third World and Global South are terms that have been used historically to describe regions and countries with certain economic, social, and political characteristics. However, it's important to note that these terms are somewhat dated and can be seen as simplistic or even pejorative in some contexts. Here's an examples on the difference. Third World historical context. The term Third World originated during the Cold War to categorize countries that were not aligned with either the Western Bloc or the First World, led by the United States and its NATO allies, or the Eastern Bloc or the Second World, led by Soviet Union and its allies. Economic connotation. In its original usage, Third World often referred to economically less developed or poorer countries, many of which were newly independent nations in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Here's some further explanation of Third World. Third World was a term coined during the Cold War era to categorize countries that were neither aligned with the Western Bloc or First World, nor the Eastern Bloc or Second World. These alignments were based on political and ideological alliances.
Today I will discuss the South Global. So the South Global, there are two classifications. First, the political and economics context. The second is the emphasis of geography. So the political and economic context, the Global South, in terms of emerged later as more politically correct alternative to Third World, where it is used to describe the country that generally face economic and development challenge, but it plays to stronger emphasis on the global power dynamics and historical legacies of colonizations and exploitations. The global South, its term of involved as a more politically sensitive and substitute for the Third World. The characterizing country dealing with the economics and development, the difficulties, while the prioritizing and recognitions of global power, but the power dynamic and the enduring the impact of the colonizations and exploitations in their struggles. This term underscores the need address not just the immediate economic challenge, but also the historical and systemic factor that have contribute to their predecessment. So the second is the emphasis on geography. Unlike the Third World, global South and doesn't necessarily refer to the country and political alignment during the Cold War. Instead, its focus is on the geographical locations with the countries in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and Oceania being part of the Global South. The Global South departed from the Cold War era terminology of Third World by shifting its focus away from the political alignment and instead of concentrating the geography. It is include the country situate predominantly in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and Oceania. Acknowledging that this region has to historically face economic and developmental challenges stemming from the factor like the colonialism, exploitations, and global power imbalance, regardless of their past political affiliations.
Good morning, sir. I'm Dead Cadet Eldon Onavilgas. So, my report is define the term of Global South. So, the Global South is the term of broadly comprises countries in the regions of Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbeans of Asia and Oceania that are the less developed economical and politicals. The terms of Global South is often misused of the misunderstanding the inclusion of South case of many users mistakenly assume the term is meant to be tropical is not a truth. A majority of Global South countries are either located in the tropics or the southern hemisphere. The term itself study economics is the fact of the Australia and down. So kanang Global South na sila yung mga issue about sa mga Cold War, mga about sa mga China o Russia na nanay sila yung mga mga kanang misunderstanding about the COVID-19. So tapos katong irang mga mistakes sa ilang mga sayop kanang mga paggamit katong mga nanay mga issue.
Differentiate the Global South from the Third World. The terms Global South and Third World are often used interchangeably to describe regions and countries facing economic, social, and political changes, but they have distinct historical and conceptual differences. Third World originated during the Cold War era, primarily referring to the countries that did not align with either the Western capitalist bloc, the First World, or the Eastern Communist bloc, the Second World. It carried connotations of economic underdevelopment and post-colonial struggles for political sovereignty. In contrast, Global South is more contemporary and inclusive term that emerged in the late 20th century, moving away from Cold War geopolitics. It encompasses countries from various geographical locations, not just the southern hemisphere, and emphasizes economic and social disparities between the so-called Global North and Global South. Taking account issues related to development, globalization, and impacts of global economic and political structures. Furthermore, while Third World historically implied a binary division of the world into three categories, first, second, and third, the Global South concept recognizes the complexity of global disparities in a more interconnected world. It acknowledges that poverty and underdevelopment are not confined to a specific set of countries and emphasizes that the importance of addressing these challenges collectively on a global scale. In essence, the Global South represents a more nuanced and contemporary understanding of the economic, social, and political issues faced by countries and regions that have historically been marginalized in a global context.
Latin American nations have significantly influenced the revolution of global relations. Historically subject to colonization and external influences, they spearheaded the movements like the Non-Aligned Movement and the Group of 77 in the 20th century, asserting the collective interest and challenging prevailing power dynamics of the fairer national order. Additionally, they contributed to the dependency theory, shedding the light of global trade imbalances and advocating the economic autonomy and the equitable economic relations, amplifying the voice of the Global South. Latin American notions have historically been deeply affected by the colonization and external influences, which have profoundly shaped their role in global relations. Despite the historical subjugation, Latin American countries have played a pivotal role in rephrasing international dynamics. In the 20th century, they spearheaded the influential movements such as the Non-Aligned Movement and the Group of 77. The NMA aimed to maintain the neutrality and the independence of the major power blocs during the Cold War, while the G77 advocated the collective interest, challenging prevailing power dynamics and striving for a more equitable international order. These initiatives reflected the Latin American determination to assert its collective voice and advocate for fairness in global relations. Moreover, the Latin American notions have made significant contributions to economic and political theory, notably the dependency theory. This theory sheds the light on global trade imbalances and emphasizes the asymmetric economic relations between developed and undeveloped notions. It advocated the economic autonomy and more equitably economic relations, amplifying the voices of the Global South. Through the historical experiences, participants on the international movement, and the theoretical contributions, Latin American notions have played a crucial role in shaping the global relations and advocating for more balanced and just international order.